Hello and welcome to, well, not really a how I paint things, because today I'm going to experiment. Now, a few of you have mentioned in the past that you'd like to see me work with oils, and it's something that I have kind of shied away from on the channel because I've never really done it before. I have on a couple of larger miniatures, tanks and things like that, but not with any real regularity and not on miniatures such as this. So what you're going to see today, I went out and I had a look at how you're supposed to make up oils and things like that, and I just gave it a shot. So this is literally me experimenting live on camera and letting you know some of the pitfalls that I've encountered as I did in real time, and also just how easy it is. It really is worth picking up a couple of oils, some varnish. I spent about 10 euros getting the stuff together for this. It is not expensive, and you'll see from the size of the bottles, I have got oil paints until the end of the world. Now, the miniature whizzing around, he is from Anvil Industry. He is one of the Diesel Punk Exolords, and I've painted him up inspired by the Trench Crusade artwork. A few of you have mentioned that as well, and I went and had a look. It got me good. So, with that in mind, I figured this was about the right sort of shape and look to it. Anyhow, it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's get started. So, to start off with, I've got my miniature here. I've gone ahead and primed him, painted him, done all of my base coats, and then hit him with a varnish. Now, I've used Munitorum varnish from Citadel. Apparently a gloss varnish is going to be better, but Munitorum varnish is what I've got, and it's a semi-satin sort of finish, so it should be fine for what I've got in mind. Mostly, we're protecting the paint underneath from what we're about to do to it. So the paints for this will be listed in the description because it's all just flat base coats. It's fairly simple. But yeah, let's crack on and make our little mud wash, as it were. So we've got here a couple of fairly cheap, these are just oil paints that I've ordered off of Amazon, black and Van Dyke brown. This I use, not this specific paint, but Van Dyke brown tends to be a really useful one to have in your armory. I've got a couple of bottles of it in acrylic, which works super well for a lot of things, so it should work just fine for mixing up our scungy wash. So here I've squidged out roughly half and half, black and brown. If you want, I would suggest err on the side of a little more brown. What I've got now, blurring the camera for me, is some white spirits. Now, I've used odorless thinner for this previously. It did not work terribly well. So instead, white spirit, you see, as we mix this down, we get a much more sort of wash-like consistency. And we can futz with the blackness or the brownness of it. And I want quite a bit of white spirit in there until we start getting, like a wash-like consistency. I'm going to run mine quite thick compared to what you'd ordinarily see. So once I'm satisfied with the consistency of that, and it's a kind of thin paint sludge, we're going to start applying this over our miniature. Now you'll see how quick this goes on and starts running into the recesses. Now, it's important as you're applying this, use a brush that you do not care about, because this, my goodness, it destroys brushes. So really making sure to work this into the recesses, the same as you would an acrylic wash. Yeah. Awful looking junk, isn't it? So once I've done this, we'll come back. Now once we've applied that over the entire miniature, my goodness, that looks awful. The more that you thin it down, the more like a wash it's going to behave. So up on its helmet here, for example, I actually added a little bit more white spirit and just blodged it in one go. On some parts, I haven't. I've left it a little bit thicker on purpose. What we'll do now is to leave this for about 20 minutes or so. You can start taking some of this off straight away, but I tend to find it easier to work with when it's a little bit more tacky, a little stickier and a little easier to shift as you'd like. So what I've got now, this is one of the most handy little things I've ever come across. It is a makeup applicator. You can get these in packs where you get 3 to like 50 of them in a box, and it's a little spongy tip at one end and a brush at the other. Now this is important because it's not going to leave any like fibers or what have you behind when we use it on the miniature. So I'm going to dip this in a little bit of white spirit and then just dab most of that off on some kitchen towel. So it's just damp. I don't want it wet. And then I'm going to start rubbing it lightly across flat areas. And we're shading in reverse here. So you'll see very quickly I'm picking up the grime and the gunk from the high points and leaving it in the recesses. Same as we would as if this were an ordinary acrylic wash, but a bit grimier. So let's get some of this off on the shoulder pads too. And as well, you can do the same thing with the smaller brush edge. This will hold a bit more white spirit, so mind how you go with it, because you don't want to take all of the grime off. But yeah, now I have the fun part of going around and basically degriming the flat panels. And anywhere that you're worried you might have taken too much off, just go back with some fresh mix, add a little bit more thinner, and you see the magic of touch it in place and blorp. That is called capillary action. I had to look that one up. Physics is on your side while you're doing these guys. Now some of that is still drying, but I think you'll see what I mean here by there's quite a bit of extra texture from that method. Now, the reason why you might want to use oils rather than a traditional acrylic wash is that this has so much more working time to it, and if you make a mistake, you can literally just rub it off with a bit of white spirit. You know, how many washes have an undo button? That's why this is so handy. You can also thin your washes down quite a lot, and as a result, get a much smoother transition of color in some areas. So it's definitely worth having a play around with. What I'm going to do is let this cure for a couple of hours, and then we'll get to doing some highlighting on them, a little bit of chipping work, and maybe some rust. Let's see what this looks like once it has cured. So, under ideal circumstances, we would leave this overnight to cure and dry properly. I don't think it's going to matter too much if I hit this with a matte varnish now. If you have any other oil paints that you want to apply, you want to do streaking or rust effects using ochres and stuff like that, then do it now. But that is the last of the oils I'm going to apply. So if I want any acrylics to actually go over the top of this, I'm going to have to varnish it. So out I go with the Munitor and varnish once again. So I did discover the hard way that you really want to let this cure properly before you varnish it, because this is now a third layer of varnish over the top of what I thought had cured. So when people are suggesting to you let it cure overnight, they're not joking. A couple of hours might be enough for it to be touch dry and to work with, but in the future, I'm definitely going to let that have more time. What I'm going to do now, though, is to treat it basically like a tank. I'm going to link in the description to where I've done the weathering on a British tank, because the colors are about right for that. Yeah, let's see what we get. So there we have the weathering done. Now I have gone inspired by the artwork and done quite a bit of rust around the edges of things. By thinning that down a little bit more than usual and applying it in a couple of layers, you get a nice gradient there. I am interested to try doing that with oils at some point though, now that I've given that a shot. Anyhow, last thing to do is now to finally varnish them one last time to seal all of that. I'm going to use a matte varnish for that, and I'm going to base them in the same way as I did my Turnip 28 guys, because I want a nice, well, not nice, I want a kludgy, awful looking trench appearance to them. So I'm going to link that in the description too. To keep it nice and quick, let's get a look at this fella once he's all finished. And so there at last, our miniature is complete. Now, you'll see that the end result is honestly not all that terribly different to how my stuff tends to turn out. It does, I guess it depends a bit on my style, but having a wash stage where there's essentially an undo button is magic. Cannot stress enough how easy it was to wiggle that around while there was a bit of working time with the oils. Now, speaking of, make sure that you are letting those cure for long enough. Like I said, I had a couple of issues with the varnish where I was being impatient, really just wanted to get this video finished, and yeah, patience is key. So hopefully there something was interesting to you, and if you want to see me tackle a few more, first time things like this, then sure, just hit me up in the comments and let me know, because it was an interesting experiment doing something I haven't done before live. And I tell you, ordinarily don't let me do that, but today I'm pretty happy with the result. So make sure you check out the description where all of those links are going to be, and I will see you next time that I want to do something off the cuff like this.